Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to present a very, very accomplished professional from the world of books and marketing and branding, Charli Hunt from London, UK. Charli, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you. Charli is the founder of Proof Content, a digital content agency focused on the commercial power of words. So, Charli, before we talk of Proof Content, tell me in brief about your own journey. Because when I was reading about you, you said your family started Foyles, the bookshop in London in 1903, and this was started by your great-great-grandfather.
Yeah, so I guess I always say that my business was founded in 2012, but started in 1903. So it started with my great-great-grandfather starting Foyles, the bookshop, and from there his son started a cargo airline. My granny has been had her own accountancy practice. My dad has lots of different businesses. And yeah, so I always knew I wanted to have my own business, and I just didn't know what the business would be. And copywriting agency kind of, combines my love of reading and writing. And so I love running business. So.
Fantastic. So let's talk now about Proof Content. What was the motivation to start this venture, and what do you do here?
So I think my motivation was I was at uni and I was freelance writing, and I just felt I was being asked to either produce very saturated content with loads of keywords in it that nobody was ever going to read apart from a search engine, or I was asked to spend an hour in a meeting discussing whether the word moist was on brand, and I just felt that there was probably a middle ground between those two. Where we could create content that people actually would like to read. But we also, we're not kind of spending hours and hours kind of, over these tiny little details. So we're very interested in kind of words with a purpose. So there's a KPI behind it. But there's also, we're not just selling things people don't need as well.
Very interesting. And when you talk about results-driven content, help me understand these words, and do give me an example.
Yeah, so I think we probably call it more data-driven content. And what I mean by that is everything we do, we're not just kind of producing content because someone says, oh, well, we need content. That's a box we need to tick in marketing because everybody's doing content now. There's a specific KPI behind everything we're doing, and we're constantly measuring it to see what works best. And with writing, there will always be a level of creativity, and you'll always need to use your own kind of ideas of what you think will work. But you really need the data because it shows you how wrong you are so many times. You just can't. You can never fully put yourself in the shoes of your audience.
So when you talk of writing content, can you give me an example of what kind of content are you writing? Is it only for brands? Is it for individuals? Is it storytelling? What exactly are you doing?
So it's mainly for brands, and it's mainly key messaging and then website rewrites. So it's mainly finding those kind of that sentence that makes people say, yes, that's what I need. And then the paragraphs underneath that kind of tell them about your business, and they really get them to be fans. And they either get people to say that's what I need, or they get people to say, oh, I don't like this company, and then you don't have to waste time marketing to them. So it's and website rewrite, so kind of balancing that kind of how do we get people to be really interested in what you're doing, but also get traffic to your website through SEO.
Very interesting. So, since you focus on digital content, next few questions will be relating to the digital world. One of the questions a lot of people have, and they've asked me this question, and which I'm going to ask you, how can brands succeed in the digital world?
Well, I think most of them are. I think COVID was a great leveler of all the, all the brands that hadn't invested in digital had to suddenly invest in it. I think it's being the same as you are in your non-digital world online and really getting your personality across. And it's just, I guess, tackling probably one channel at a time rather than going for everything, because you just have to learn what works for your brand. But yeah, I think just creating content that people actually want to read is a good start. But yeah, SEO.
So I started in the marketing business in 1979. I'm from the boomers generation. And I remember, when we used to talk about to our agency, we used to be talking about full page advertisements, about billboards. And when cinema came in, we were talking about, a 1 minute film. How are traditional platforms like print and television adapting? Because television and print are still there, but how are they adapting to this incredibly fast digital medium?
Well, I think it's something that my uncle says. So he took over the running of Foyles for a bit, and he always says that we worried that when the light bulb was invented, candles would go out of business, but now more candles are sold than ever. So people, and I think direct mail is having a big resurgence, and you can't do the same as everybody else. And outdoor and TV and radio is a huge thing, and people, you'd think that podcasts would put radio out of business, but it really hasn't. People still, I was talking with my sister the other day, and I love driving to work and listening to the radio and thinking, oh my God, everybody in the other cars are probably listening to the same thing.
Yes.
It's like there's still so many opportunities. And as long as you're creating really brilliant ads that people want to see and resonate with people, I think that's all you need.
And as someone who supports brands, how are brands connecting with the consumer, given the proliferation of so many different forms of media and so many different forms of social media?
How are they connecting with what, sorry?
With the consumer.
Oh, well, I think it's great. The rise of social media has, with Instagram stories especially, it's so much more kind of, here's something we've quickly created, rather than here are these really carefully curated posts on feed. And these kind of short little videos, people love to see behind the scenes of a brand now. And so actually I think they're connecting by being a bit more authentic and a bit more, this is what we're about, rather than putting your best face forward or whatever. So I think actually it's been a really brilliant opportunity for brands to be more humanized.
And yet when you look at the communication, when TikTok came, it actually blew away the 1 minute or 30 seconds or 45 seconds on television. And now people are saying that we must communicate in 7 seconds and 8 seconds and 10 seconds. When it comes to your work, how do you adapt to communicating your message in such a short span of time?
Well, it's something we cover all the time in key messaging is, we've got that one sentence. And the main thing is you've got to work on every single sentence. And that sentence needs to make the person want to read the next sentence. So I think with TikTok, it's probably just that, isn't it? It's how do I get them to love this 5 seconds, and then the next 5 seconds, and then the next 5 seconds. I think people will watch longer things. But yeah, I think with YouTube Shorts as well, it's
even YouTube Shorts stops at 59.9 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's an opportunity to repurpose things as well. So maybe if you see it as this is a teaser, and if people are interested in more, they can go and read the full blog, or they can watch the full YouTube video, or, but this clip is what I've kind of taken out from here now.
And would you be able to share with me 1 or 2 examples of, without giving any names of clients, of course, of the work that you are doing?
Of stuff we're doing. Yeah, so I guess it really ranges. So we've worked with, Boots to do makeup content. We work with LexisNexis to do law technology content. We work with, I'm trying to think of some other brands that are
Okay.
international. We work with a wealth management company in Los Angeles. We kind of cover everything because we've got this key messaging process that means we can work with brands who want to stand out.
And again, when I look back 4 decades and I'd go and sit with a copywriter, then it was with a pen and a big chart paper and preparing storyboards, etc. How is technology changing the work of agencies like yours?
Well, I think agencies' jobs are to always be ahead of these things. So we should be bringing clients, new technologies that they should be using. So obviously AI is the big one in my industry, and it's really brilliant. It's so helpful to write an article and then use AI to help it rank on Google. Because obviously AI is then just writing for other AI. And we're making sure we're writing for the users. So I think people who don't develop their writing and who don't develop that creativity are probably should be a bit worried about AI. But if you're a brilliant writer and you're always developing what you're doing, I don't think AI is going to take your job. It just gets rid of the boring stuff in your job. And then I guess there's also more practical bits like, I have a fully remote agency and the technology just makes it so easy. It can hire, really brilliant people all over the world.
And when you look at bringing in content writers, what is the kind of skill set that you're looking for? And has this changed over the years?
So in-house, I need people. For me, the most important thing is their personality. So people who are really interested in what we're doing, they like learning, and they are just very nice. I don't want any kind of politics or anything in the business. I just want us to all be doing our jobs and happy. And then in terms of their writing skill, I think it's a growth mindset. So when a client gives you feedback, instead of being like, oh, I did it wrong, it's how do we work together to create the best piece of content? Because the clients are the experts in their industry. So
correct.
We need the client's input on everything. So I think, that's really important to me, that people who are willing to learn and grow, I think is the most important thing. I've had freelancers I've worked with in the past who are very good writers, but as soon as you give them any kind of feedback, they're like, no, well, you can work with someone else then. And I just think it's just not a helpful way to be a writer.
I understand. And the other aspect of content, especially when you're putting it out with brands, is the impact that one line will have culturally on a diverse community of people. And you live in an incredibly diverse country. Yeah. How does culture impact the content you are creating?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. So with translations, for example, we obviously work with people all around the world. It's very tricky. Generally, you would only ever translate into your mother tongue. But if you're a Spanish person, let's say, and you've lived in the UK for 20 years, you're going to be missing a lot of the cultural nuances. So we actually prefer to hire translators. I mean, some people can do it, obviously, but we actually prefer to hire translators who live in their home country or have recently, I guess, because we need them to really understand the culture. And when you write across cultures, so if you write English for an American audience, for example, my head of content is American, and that's very useful because she can understand the cultural nuances as well, not just the grammatical, replacing the S with a Z or whatever. And the same actually with Indian content. So a lot of it is in English, but it's a very different type of English. So it's always really important to us that we have that properly localized, and we have someone who lives in India, or at least has lived in India, who can really understand the culture and also the different words that are used.
Fascinating. And how much interaction do you normally have with the brand manager when you're developing the content? Because when I speak to brand managers, their roles have changed dramatically because of the incredible amount of analytics they're now getting.
Yes, yeah. So it really depends on. So sometimes we work with the brand manager. Quite often we'll work with a head of content or a marketing director for the key messaging and website rewrite. We might work with the e-commerce team for websites, or we might work with SEO. It really is varied who we work with, and yeah, we do work with brand managers a bit, with a few clients, and yeah, their jobs are really changing. But I also think the core of what they do is actually.
We've had some interesting situations in the last 1 year in India where some content was created and this was done by very, very large brands, and then it hit the wrong chord with another community. And then it had to be withdrawn. So my question to you is, do you also constantly get feedback on the content you're creating? And then do you have to rework?
I think as writers, I mean, I'm sure we get it wrong sometimes, but as writers, I think it's really important to read a lot and put yourself in other people's shoes. So I like to think that we're also quite, I mean, we're not all young, but quite a lot of us in the company are young. And I think that means you have more of a finger on the pulse of, what are the correct things to say. I think you don't always get it right. Especially, I'm aware I'm privileged because I'm white. So it's really important to me that if we're writing for a different audience, that we have people who are from that audience involved. And I think that's the best way to, I think having a diverse team is the best way to stop that happening.
Amazing. So we've got time for one more question. And this is, Charli, for a lot of the people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your amazing experience over the years as an entrepreneur, as someone who's creating such amazing digital content for brands, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away?
So I think the first one is to hone your voice. So whether it's your voice or the brand's voice, it's really important to make it sound, make that voice sound like itself, whether it's kind of on radio or outdoor ads or social media.
And could you give me an example of how one can hone one's voice?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to really know who you're writing for, why you're writing, what your company stands for, what its core message and what it does at its core. Those are the most important things. But then I think also writing every day.
Yeah.
Getting feedback on your writing. Those are all really, really important ways to hone that voice.
Very interesting. Yeah, please go ahead.
And I guess look out for other voices that you like and what really actively read. So why do you like that voice? Why do you like what they've said? What is it that, and writing's job really is to get out the way. You shouldn't really feel you're reading. You shouldn't think this is brilliant content, because you should be so interested in the ideas that it's
very interesting. And on that note, and your very, very interesting lessons, hone your voice, which I think is such a powerful statement you're making. And even more is look out for other voices you like. Thank you, Charli, for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your own journey, about proof content, about all the nuances of digital content and what goes into writing good content and good copy. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.